Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's live broadcast, Becoming Your Own GPS, Navigating Your Career. I'm Julianne Child of Nazareth, and I will be your moderator for today's event. We're delighted to bring you this educational web seminar presented by LabRoots and sponsored by an education grant from Lab Leaders. Lab Leaders is Roche's promise to empower laboratories and the people within them. This is accomplished by providing clinical and strategic insights, support, and solutions from the industry's top innovators via lableaders.com, the 2016 Lab Leaders webinar series, and through L2 Summits, our Lab Leaders live events. We have a few important announcements before we begin. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and we encourage you to ask questions during the event. You can submit questions by typing them into the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. You can enlarge the slide window by clicking on the screen icon in the lower right-hand corner of the slide window. If you have any technical problems viewing or hearing this presentation, please click on the support button at the top right of the presentation window, or submit your problem through the green Q&A button on the lower left. This webinar has been approved for continuing education credits. Please click on the CE button at the bottom left corner and follow the process to receive your credits. I will now introduce today's speakers. Motivating and challenging individuals to excel both professionally and personally has been the focus of executive coach Sharon Weinreb's 20-plus-year career. Sharon's wealth of experience includes working as a trainer and director in the nonprofit and healthcare sectors, owning and selling a successful business, and for 10 years serving as a director for a global staffing executive search firm serving top companies. Sharon is certified by the Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, a program accredited by the International Coach Federation. She is also certified to administer the Hogan and Energy Leadership Index assessments. Sharon holds a Master's of Arts in Gerontology and CR Administration from the University of Maryland. Patrick O'Sullivan is currently the Senior Director of Ancillary Services at Florida Hospital in Orlando, Florida. Florida Hospital is one of the largest Medicare providers in the United States and is part of the Adventist Health System. He has a degree in medical technology and a master's degree in management, in addition to a specialist in blood banking from ASCP. Patrick spent his career in the laboratory, but was able to hold a variety of positions, ranging from a bench technologist, department manager, LIS manager, and director of laboratories. He oversaw growth and construction of his laboratory and helped develop lean processes and automation throughout the laboratory. He was an adjunct professor at the University of Central Florida from 2005 to 2014 and still teaches and lectures frequently. LabRoots and Lab Leaders both thank Patrick and Sharon for collaborating to share their experiences and strategies for all of our benefit today. I will now pass the presentation over to them.
Thank you, Julianne, for your thoughtful introduction. Patrick and I want to thank Roche Diagnostics and LabLeaders.com team for bringing this important topic, your career development, to light, and also for your assistance in helping us prepare for today. And of course, thank you to all the participants for joining Patrick and myself from all over the world to participate in this webinar. Most importantly, congratulations for taking your time out to be on this webinar. You've taken the first step in navigating your career as a lab leader. You are the person who cares most about you and the direction your career journey takes. So, in today's webinar, we want to help you be proactive and create a roadmap for your future. We're here to help you apply your well-developed discovery and research skills to make a conscious choice to build your career. You're going to hear from both Patrick and myself throughout today's webinar, but I have the honor to speak first by sharing the agenda. So, let's get started. The agenda includes helping you to first recognize your key talents and motivations to build a sustainable and fulfilling career. Outline how to look beyond a linear track for your career, and give some tips, tricks, and best practices for creating impactful business relationships. And of course, as Julianne mentioned, we want you to feel comfortable asking questions throughout this webinar. I want to start by telling you a quick story. Recently, I was at a leadership conference in Springfield, Massachusetts. I had a table where people came up to me and asked me questions about their careers. There were career changers of all ages at this workshop, working men and working women in a variety of positions and at all leadership levels. What was interesting to me was the 3 words that I heard most were, I don't know. I don't know. For example, they say, I have some great skills and want to make a change, but don't know. I don't want to make a change, but don't know how. Or I heard, I have a degree in certifications, but I don't know what I want to do. I don't know. As an executive and career coach, my first response is, get rid of the words I don't know from your vocabulary, please. At best, it's a short-term excuse, and at worst, it can perpetually hold you back from realizing your full potential. You are choosing to not take ownership when you use the words, I don't know. I heard an expression that I really like. It's not what you know, it's what you do with what you know. That's what we want to focus on today. Focus on what I do know. You know a lot. We are all in a continuous state of learning. What you don't know, you can learn through formal or informal education or by creating new experiences. That's what we're going to share with you on our roadmap today. So to know me is to know I love quotes. And Malcolm Forbes said, too many people overvalue what they are not and undervalue what they are. So let's focus on what you do know. Again, the seminar is interactive, so let's take the time right now to get to know yourself a little better. Let's start with, tell me, what motivates you to get out of bed and go to work each morning? What do you love most about being in the lab or about working in the pharmaceutical community? Take a few seconds, in one word or a couple of words, put your answers in the Q&A box, and let's see what we come up with. Okay, thank you. Some of the potential answers I'm looking at. You love innovation. You love hands-on work. You like to be creative. I see somebody who just loves chemistry. I have, thank you, performing experiments. I'm sorry about that. I love to have fun. Somebody else likes intellectual stimulation, public health. Excellent. All these answers are what are driving us. Why do you get up in the morning? Let's see if I have a couple more. Curiosity is one. So let's move on. Self-awareness is the first step in any career journey. So what we're going to do is give you some self-awareness takeaways. First, discover what makes you unique. It sounds cliche, but you are your brand. It's your personal brand. Just like a business, you want to be able to explain what makes you stand out from the rest. What about your personality, your character, experiences helps your employer to recognize your unique leadership qualities? One way to look at it is, what is one word that describes you at your best? Understand your why. Of course, it's important to know what you do and how you do it, but what gets others to believe in you is when you understand why you want to be in that role or what makes you the best candidate for the promotion or a new job. What inspires you? Because what inspires you is going to inspire that employer to consider you. And then be authentic. Authentic is a word that's used a lot now, but what does it mean? Being authentic means being genuine. If you try to be the person others want you to be, it's not sustainable. It means being comfortable with yourself and also being comfortable with yourself when you are with others. You can read more about this in a book by Amy Cuddy called Presence, which is a really good tool. Next, assess your core strengths. To identify your strengths, ask yourself these questions. What do people come to you for when they need help? What words describe your personality? What are you most confident doing, or what skills can you apply to your current role? And then, really important, ask yourself, does this align with what people come to you for? When you thought about those questions, what about them were similar? For example, do you consider yourself a great problem solver in the lab and you work really well under pressure? Do people often come to you to help solve their problems? And then the real question is, do you enjoy solving those problems? I know somebody mentioned in the chat box that that was something they enjoyed. If the answer is yes, build on this. Sometimes when things come natural to us, we negate them as too easy, and we don't realize how those abilities are natural gifts are a strength. Some other strengths might include being flexible or curious, or maybe you're somebody who's really disciplined. What are your strengths? Another thing to consider is if you're challenged by a situation, do you become self-critical and then you react and flee rather than stay the course? Being self-aware means recognizing your own sweet spot or knowing when it's time to move forward if maybe there's something you like or can do better. It's also recognizing if there are areas that maybe you can still develop. That's really important for assessing your strengths. And look at the job description. Are you sticking to one job description, or are you creating a role within your job? Next, identify your values. Really important. People don't often recognize how important our values are. After the webinar or during the webinar, if you feel like you think about it, write down what you consider to be your top 3 values. Your values are your motivators. They're your drivers to perform at your best. People don't often realize that values are the foundation for our making decisions and enjoying and being fulfilled at what we do. They're so personal and specific to you. They really represent who you are. I've worked with people who they've listed 10 very important values for them. That's what drives them. Those values, they want them to be recognized in the course of their day. And then there are others who have 3 very distinct values that they know they need to have satisfied, whether it be their family or helping others or being challenged on the job. All of those would be some values. What we don't often recognize is how important it is that your personal values align with the company values. For example, if your values aren't aligned with the culture or the people, you're not going to be motivated to do the job. You know, you might not realize what's bugging you. You might not be able to define it. You just know it's not working. If that's the case, reassess. Look at what values drive you. I'll give you an example of how values can make a difference on the job. Perhaps you started in the lab because you love a job that's hands-on and you're not somebody who likes to work in a traditional office setting. Maybe you love science and want to make discoveries, but your family situation has changed and you need to prioritize differently and can no longer work the night shift. Another situation that your values may get involved is You've been working more as a solopreneur, somebody who really does their job independently, and being part of a team is important to you. That's another value. You have to look at your environment. What is energizing you and what's taking away that energy? Perhaps lab testing is still something you love doing. How can you expand on that? And that's what we're going to be talking about with the different ideas in today's webinar. Your core values don't tend to change over time, but you might find that you prioritize them differently, or you might find in different situations you recognize different values. So, again with self-awareness, identify your interests and your passions. A passion is something that truly interests you. When you're passionate about something, it gives you a really rewarding feeling. It makes you want to investigate further. It intrigues you. It's likely to be something you would do even if you weren't getting paid for it. So if you love the discovery, you're probably somebody who's curious in the lab and outside of the lab. Ultimately, you want to make sure that you keep interested and challenged in order to engage your career in the long haul. So ask yourself, what do you enjoy most about your job? Look at your resume, look at your job description, and see how you can answer that question. What interests you most in those areas? And what areas do you still want to learn more about? The question came up for me recently, what's the difference between our values and our passions? Sometimes they're similar, but our values often initiate from our upbringing. There are core beliefs, and that's why that drives us, whereas our passion are truly our interests. They light our fire. You know when you're in that zone that you're meeting your passion, and passion is contagious. Your employer will feel it from you. If you're a leader or you have direct reports, your direct reports will feel your passion, your desire to really do a great job. And finally, learn and tell your story. People learn through stories, and that's why it's so great today that we have Patrick to tell his story. What did you do before? What's changed? What can you learn from your past experiences? And this is something people don't often think to do. What patterns or themes have come up in your own personal story? Is there somebody who can help you observe the change or that you've observed change themselves? Maybe that's somebody you can emulate. And telling stories, I want to pass the wand now to Patrick. It's a perfect time for Patrick O'Sullivan to share firsthand his story and how he grew and manifested his career with unexpected opportunities. Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, Sharon, thank you for passing the baton to me. And again, I want to reiterate that I really appreciate everybody's attendance today. So we're going to go way back in time, maybe before some of you were born. But I started my career professionally as a medical technologist back in 1981. So at the time, I graduated college and started my first job at the hospital and had opportunity to work as a generalist for a little while, and then kind of migrated to blood banking. And I liked blood banking because it was a passion of mine. So Sharon was just talking about passion. So where I migrated into is where I felt really comfortable. And I saw in your comments earlier how many of you are passionate about your job and that you like to come to work, you like the people, you like the science of it. I like the science of it, which really drove me into this career. So I started working and, come to work every day and do job and, produce results. And when I was in blood bank, produced washed blood cells and things like that. But as I got on, a couple of years later, I said, I want to make a difference. The next step I want to take is I want to make a difference. So I thought to myself, well, how do I make a difference? And And you'll see throughout my career, you ask questions, and the question may have a different response at different times. But at that moment in time, when I was young, and I still consider myself young today, I said I need some more education. I looked to get a specialty in blood banking, for example. And then I thought about a little bit about, looking at other job opportunities. So I was young and had an opportunity to be a director of an outreach program. And I went for that and put in my application and everything, and I didn't get it. But it was always an experience to try for different jobs and different things that kind of stretch what you do. And I was fortunate enough after 5 years to get a job as the blood bank manager. And this starts my career of what I'll call the 5-year plan. So as we talk today, you're going to find about every 5 years I put on a different hat. And it's important to know how you got to that different hat in there. But my first learning that was important is you go from a task-oriented job as you do tasks of the day. I wanted to make a difference. And I move to a job that now requires leadership. And it's something which I haven't had experience in. So now you'll see, as we continue the story and Sharon continues her thing, how you make that leap from management to being a leader. Sharon, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks so much, Patrick. I appreciate that. And that really goes into this next section really well. I'd love for you to take a few seconds. Patrick spoke about how he was defining, in a sense, how he was defining his journey and his own self-awareness. Take a few seconds and think about, how do you define success? Go ahead and put it in the Q&A box. How do you measure success for yourself? See some of the answers we have here. So I see some people are saying that success is about growth. It's about owning their own home. It's about having a title on the job or being a subject matter expert. So what you find is success is different for everybody. However, it starts typically with the same place. It starts with having a courageous mindset. Courage plus vision equals success. I was recently at a conference, and I got this formula actually from Marlee Matlin. I don't know if you guys are familiar with her. Marlee Matlin is a celebrity and guest actress. She won an Oscar, I think she was age 19, as the first guest actress. And she said this is what got her to do what she was told she could never do. What is courage? Courage is doing something even when it seems impossible or frightening. When you start with courage, confidence follows. People often feel like you have to have confidence first, but truly it's about courage. It means getting out of your comfort zone without going into your panic zone. I love that. You get worried. It's about taking chances without worrying about the mistakes, but rather learning from them. So, for example, we just talked about skills. How might you stretch your skills? What would you do differently? Then add vision. Take the time and write a vision statement for yourself. What do you want your life to look like 5 years from now, 3 years, or even 1 year? And then after you write that vision down, reverse engineer it. Create your own action steps so that you can realize that dream. More often than not, your path to career success looks more like a jungle gym than it does a ladder. I love that expression because we often think that we're on a linear path. And we're here to tell you today, and I think Patrick's the perfect example, that it doesn't have one approach. There are many ways to realize your vision. And here's Patrick again to talk a little bit about his story, his jungle gym story, if you would.
So now we're going to fast forward another 5 years in my career. And I was manager of our transfusion services for 5 years. And then an opportunity came up to be a data processing coordinator. Now, mind you, this is still 1990-ish, and we hadn't got to use the word information systems yet. But there was this data processing coordinator, which translates into a laboratory information systems manager of today's world. And I looked at that job, and it was intriguing to me. You know, I always liked computers. For those of you who are old enough to remember, I had a Commodore 64 at home, and lots of horsepower in that machine. But what I did was this job intrigued me, and I thought, wow, I know nothing about it, nothing what it entails. So I ended up going to the person who had that job, and I said, what do you do? You know, I had no do, and it sounded very interesting to me, and it wasn't part of my comfort zone. And Sharon talks about being in your comfort zone. It was totally foreign from what I did. I mean, you didn't shake tubes to run the computer. So I decided to apply for the job, and I got the job, and it was a very different job. Being a manager of people and processes, it was easy to direct. But now I was only the manager of a computer, and maybe it was good it didn't talk back to me, most of the time anyway. But I learned to work with other people who certainly had more understanding of programming and computer sciences than I had. And I began to work towards learning what they did. And I found a very important lesson in this part of my career. It was leading work through other people. So instead of being the manager of people, I needed to work with other people. And it was a skill that, again, I had to learn and I had to get better at as time went on. So as this phase of my career went, I always learned to work with other people. And the results that I produced were for the common good of everyone. So the better the computer system was, the more functionality it has, the better programs we had, the better training that I did, it helped out everyone. So it was a different fulfillment that I had from the beginning in my career. Sharon, back to you.
Thank you so much, and I love that because that's the perfect transition. I love what you said when you said you didn't know about computer programming. There are people who knew more than you, but you were willing to explore. And that transitions perfectly to saying you don't know what you don't know, but you can get answers. You can learn from others. So how can you identify other opportunities? For example, you might think that the next steps, if you're working in the lab, are to be the manager or the director, but you don't know where to go from there or if there are other options. Maybe for you, managing doesn't excite you, but you actually love data collection, that portion of your work. So you can explore opportunities and speak to people who are working as data analysts or gathering big data, which is a big area today in pharma. Or maybe you love operations and recognize that in order to get further, you want to get yourself a business degree so you can excel in the operations arena in the pharmaceutical industry. That's great. It's thinking outside the box and recognizing you don't have to have all the answers. A really great thing to do is go on LinkedIn, look at profiles of people who have worked in labs. See what their career trajectory looked like. You're going to find all different stories and different ways and different paths. You might even learn something that you didn't know existed, a job or a job opportunity or career opportunity, I should say. Then create a list of people you admire. It could be a professor. It could be your current or a previous boss. It could be a peer. What are they doing? And what knowledge can you learn from them? Investing in your learning is so important. Another way to do that and speaking to people, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term informational interviews. I like to call it an informational conversation. It's really just a meeting with you as somebody who's either seeking a job or looking to accelerate your career or transform your career, meets with somebody in either a job, a field, a different company, and ask them questions about real-life experiences. Similar to what Patrick is sharing with you today. Talk to more people, because what he has to offer is so valuable. Find more people. When you invest in your learning, I like the expression, a new expression is just-in-time learning versus just one-time learning. In my day, you go to school, you get your degree, and unless you had specific careers like in medicine as a doctor, you didn't necessarily have to continue. But that's not true anymore. It's really important for you to recognize that learning has to be continuous. All of you who are on this webinar are right in there. I give you a lot of credit because you're recognizing that there are opportunities. Listen to more of the lableaders.com webinars. Read the white papers that come out. Look at other resources. Research trends in your industry or look at associations, join LinkedIn groups and see what they have to share. Surround yourself with others who will help you grow. Think about it. Who influences you most in your career? You know, whose opinion matters to you? What Patrick said, lead work with others instead of leading others from the top. How can you find peers, find colleagues? Who's your boss's peer? What might they be able to share with you? He might be your next boss. What other departments could you be inquiring about? So I'm going to let Patrick tell you how he leveraged learning and stepping up in his career in this next chapter. Go ahead, Patrick.
So one of the things that I learned early is you don't know everything, but you can find out lots of stuff by talking to people and by encouraging yourself to learn. So how do you learn? So back in 1991, I decided to go for my master's. And I wanted to take my master's degree. I looked at what was out there, and I decided to get a master's degree in management. And one of the first classes I had was finance, or accounting, I'm sorry. And I never had accounting before. You know, it came from this strict science background, and numbers weren't part of that. And I took the class, and I actually struggled a little bit in it. And then I got into it, and then we had finance and things like that, and I really liked that. And as I look back across my career, that accounting, that finance that I had as part of my master's degree has helped me out tremendously. And I was telling somebody this morning how much I love numbers and data analytics and stuff. So that's one way to learn is through professional learning. But the other way is through professional associations. You got to get out there and get involved. So nobody's going to come to you and offer you a different job or an opportunity necessarily. You've got to create experience for yourself. So what I did was became part of professional organizations. So the Clinical Lab Managers Association, ASCP, I would go to AACC. User groups for information systems was quite useful for me to meet other people and to get to know people. And through those associations and through starting to know people and becoming part of professional organizations, I got to go places. How many of you go to a trip to a convention or anything? Do you take the time to visit a hospital, another healthcare institution, another laboratory? Do you take the time to be a CAP inspector, for example, which can get you throughout the world and see what other people do? And when you're out there and visiting other places, you want to talk to people. And I want to call this purposeful talking. It's not how are you today or whatever, is ask them about their job. You know, if you have a particular challenge, ask them, how do you solve this staffing issue, or how do you solve a technical issue? Listen to them, see, observe, know what other people do. You can learn a lot from having purposeful conversations with many, many people. And one of the things Sharon will tell you is to develop this set of people that you can go back to and ask questions throughout your career. I remember meeting a pathologist at a CLMA meeting, and we came across each other again at a computer user group meeting, and then we came across each other again at ASCP, and through the years we developed a relationship, and I was able to learn from him about how his operations were all the way in California, even though I was here in Florida. The other thing is take opportunity when you get it to teach. and I taught 10 years at the University of Central Florida. Teaching keeps you current, and it allows you to take that information and formulate it in such a way as you can tell other people about it. And as you teach, you learn yourself. So I encourage you to take opportunity to teach things, even if it's something you do every day. And every once in a while, teach something that you don't know anything about and do all the research for that. Sharon?
That's great. And I have to tell you, Patrick, in that vein, I just started teaching at a college for the same reason. So I'm heeding your advice, and I totally concur with that as well. So tips, tricks, and best practices. What are the top 5 tips that we can give you? There's so many different things we're learning today, but we're going to try to narrow it down, and I'm going to build upon what Patrick just said. Being good at what you do is not enough to get you to the next level. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to be aware of how you can work with people and diagnostics at a bigger level. But it's about being connected. Patrick just mentioned how over the years he might see people at the same conference. Think about start before you need it, networking. I sometimes suggest when someone gets a new job, the first thing they do is meet someone new in their company every day. People are expecting you to introduce yourself. Even if you're somewhat quiet or shy, you have this open door to just say, hi, I'm new, I'd like to introduce myself. If you're not comfortable with that, then see if somebody else is willing to introduce you. Find a colleague or your boss or a peer that you'll be working with and have them take you around to introduce you to different people. Sometimes we just go through our day so quickly that we forget to say hello or sit with someone new at lunch and introduce yourself in the cafeteria. Learn about what they're doing. Be curious. Curiosity is all part of the learning process. I challenged one of my coachees once to set a goal to meet 2 new people every week on their job. Some companies aren't that big. Other companies are larger. But it doesn't just have to be in your company that you're meeting 2 new people. But make that your goal. You can even tell somebody, I have a goal to meet 2 new people a week. And they'd be flattered that you selected them as one of the people to meet. Once again, we said don't stay in-house. Speak to people in other hospitals, other companies. You can talk to people, the pharmaceutical sales reps who are selling to your department. Speak to other technicians. Everybody has something you can learn. Even if that's not something you wish to do, it's a new connection and it's a new opportunity. When you start learning, as Patrick said, even teaching, you continue to be a valuable contributor to your organization. And you're growing at the same time. For those of you who've been working for a long time in a company, you can start now. It's never too late. Build relationships. You don't want to work in a silo. You don't want to just keep your head down and get your work done. So show genuine interest in people. Make sure when you show genuine interest, you're listening, you're making eye contact, you're making them feel good. You can also use LinkedIn Premium. For those of you who are not familiar with it, you can get it for 30 days free, so go on that site. And sometimes people don't realize networking is not just industry, but it can also be socializing outside. When you're liking what you do, you meet people. Find a mentor, be a mentor. I love that expression. If you're a mentor to somebody else, likely, law of attraction, somebody will come and mentor you. But find people that you know. Don't assume that someone is not there to support you. Ask. Asking is sometimes the most important tool. I know somebody who started a program, and maybe you can start a mentorship program in your company. They called it 3 cups of coffee, and that's all it took. And then create your own personal board of directors. Just Patrick just mentioned, who is your personal board of directors? They're people that you trust who can support you in your development. They can be senior professionals. They can be champions in your industry. They can be boss. They can be friends. I know somebody who told me Oprah was on her board of directors. Did she know it? No. But it's people that you can look to for information. Yes, it's ideal to have a diverse group of people that can guide and inspire you and give you advice. And the ones who do know they're on your board of directors, ask them. Tell them that you want feedback, or what I like to call feed forward, so they can speak to you straight up and tell you how you're showing up. And then give back. Teaching is a great way to give back. Sharing articles, blog posts, or write articles so that you can be seen as a leader in your field. It's so much easier today with the internet. And what I like to say is, focus on we, not the with them. What's with them? What's in it for me? Think about what you're giving. And Patrick, go ahead, you're on. What are some real life experiences you want to mention?
So the next phases in my career were actually, again, sticking with the 5-year plan. So after first being the data processing coordinator, we actually built a department for laboratory information systems, which I became manager of. So I did that for about 5 years and really started to expand knowledge in total laboratory operations. Sometimes the path you're in allows you to see the outside a little bit. So being as part of the computer system, I was able to see how the computer system affected all areas of the lab, things I didn't know about. At one point in my career, even though I was a medical technologist, I helped write a cytology database, and the cytology manager was teaching me about cytology. So I got to learn new things in actually doing work with the computer systems. Opportunity again arose to be assistant director of laboratories and direct operations of about half of our laboratory departments there. Again, an area that some areas that I wasn't totally familiar with, but you take the leap and you start to focus your energies on areas that you don't know about. Again, talking to people, reading different magazines, different publications, and one of the things I do believe totally in reading, there's a lot of publications out there, and if you teach, you let your students read them and do reports back to you. That's one way to learn quicker, but you want to learn and read. I was assistant director for about 5 years and then moved on to be the director of the laboratories. Again, a whole new world and a larger operation, so you're just growing on what you know. But as time went by, we started looking at healthcare in a different way. Looking beyond the walls of the laboratory, looking beyond the walls of the hospital, understanding about the community of healthcare. And as I began to look in this, I became very interested in hospital operations. You know, how do you run a hospital versus running a lab? What things are important? In the lab, we tend to deal with test tubes and specimens. Out there in the hospital, you deal with patients. And you deal with people's lives no matter what you do, but when you get closer to it, it means a different thing. So the opportunity again came up for me a couple of years ago to be a director of ancillary systems. Again, areas I didn't know anything about. I didn't know about respiratory therapy. I didn't know about rehabilitation services. So again, talk to those people. One of the first things I did was go to a seminar on rehabilitation and really started to understand what they do. And then you learn from people. One is to talk to mentors like Sharon is talking about. But the second thing is to talk to people. If you go into a job where you are not familiar with the work, talk to the people that do the work. And I found rounding with the staff members a great value to understanding how people do work, what they do, what their job is. And then as you're their senior leader, you can understand what they do so they can talk to you. So you've got to continue to learn, continue to talk, and really reach out and find out new information and leverage those learnings so that as you move on or move over, which is not a bad thing, and do different things in your life, that you're able to see the whole picture. Sharon?
Thank you so much. And so make a commitment to yourself. That's really what Patrick is saying. What I love that you said is he didn't know about a lot of things, but he said yes. Opportunities came and he said yes. Write down your commitment and make a contract with yourself. What you want to do doesn't just happen. You have to be purposeful. So here's some quick tips. Show grit. Grit is resilience and the ability to stay committed to your goals, even when challenged. Set actionable goals, because that's where confidence comes in, and achieve them. Do something for your career every day, even if it's just 10 to 15 minutes, and make sure you're part of the plan and not just part of the company's work every day. Focus on the process and not the results. You want to take the long view. What's your legacy going to be? And the short view. Next week, next month, how are you working on your prioritizing your career? And I mentioned it before, and I'll mention it again. Amy Cuddy, I mentioned her book earlier, and I saw somebody ask. The book is Present. And what she says in that book is, fake it till you become it. Go for it. It doesn't mean you're not genuine or authentic, but it means you have the courage to be yourself so that you can excel and pick a career and make job choices. As I mentioned, I love quotes, and here's another one. We spoke about success before, and I have to say some more came in on success. People said success is about improving lives, accomplishing goals, making patient lives better. Success is not the key to happiness. Happiness is the key to success. So when you're looking at navigating your career, what makes you happy? That's what all this self-awareness journey is about. And on that, I want to have Patrick have the last word until we have question and answer. Patrick, you're on.
Sharon, I really just want to repeat a little bit what you said, and as you look back, as you do things in your life, I really think it's important to be purposeful. And often I say to people that work for me, it's, you know, a lot of times you say, oh, I appreciate your hard work or work hard or whatever. But actually what I appreciate is purposeful work, that you understand why you're doing the work, what you're doing it for. And the same thing goes about your career. As you look to say, hey, I want to do something different. I want to expand opportunities. Maybe you want to make more money. Maybe you want to be happy at doing something different. You need to be purposeful about it. It's not going to happen by accident. It's not going to happen by you sitting in a chair. It's going to happen by you going out and talking to people, by taking a chance of going into the unknown and doing something that you haven't done before and learning about it and becoming good at it and then looking for your next opportunities. So I just have to repeat what Sharon said. Go for it and just do it. So anyway, on my behalf, I want to thank you guys for listening, and I think we turn it back over to the moderator at this point.
Yes, thank you for that informative presentation. Before we get started on the question and answer session, I would like to remind our audience how to submit questions. You could submit questions by typing them into the Q&A box, which can be found by clicking on the green Q&A button at the lower left of the presentation window. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can. Our first question, can you provide thoughts on the following? I uncover a new role I'm interested in, but it doesn't fully align with what I recognize as my core strengths. What would you recommend as my next step?
So I'll answer that. It's Sharon. Every time you go into a new job, there are going to be new strengths that you have to align with. I think Patrick mentioned it when he said he knew nothing about some of the areas that he was tackling in terms of he went to seminars to learn. So I guess the question I have for you, are these areas that you absolutely are not interested in, or is it that you're fearful or that you don't currently have those strengths. Because if you don't have them, then there are ways to get them and learn. And I think the first step is speaking to others to see what it is you need. Speak with your boss and find out how you might be able to develop those skills within the current role that you are. And then when we talk about alignment, I often think the difference between aligning our strengths versus our values. Your values are that core belief. If your values aren't aligned, you're going to be thrown off energetically. It's not going to feel right. But strengths are skills that can be developed. Hope that answers that question.
The next question. Do you need to formally ask someone to be a part of your board of directors or a mentor? If so, what does that look like?
I will go ahead with this and say, do you need to formally ask somebody? I think when I use the example of Oprah, I don't think that person was asked, but I do think that you do want a core group of people that you want to say, I really respect you, I really trust your thoughts, and you're going to give me honest feedback as to how I can grow. And as I said, it can be family members, it can be a boss, it can be a colleague, or you find a mentor, and say to them, I'd love to be on my board of directors. It doesn't mean that you're going to have formal meetings, but what you do want to do is make sure you have consistent touch-base time with them or follow-up time with them. If it's somebody that you're just using as an example for you to emulate, that's a different story. That might be a person that you read articles that they've written, or you look at their career trajectory and you try to emulate or aspire to that position. So that's how
the next question.
Thank you.
How do you navigate looking for your next role if you define success in your current job differently than your immediate supervisor?
I'll take this one, it's Patrick. It's very interesting. I believe when you work for somebody, your job is to work for them and do what they need to do. The success, if you were in their job, what you would do might be different. So I think you really have to step back a little bit and say, okay, I'm in a job and I have a manager or somebody who I'm working for, and you need to fulfill that role. When you look for a different role, you may want to do something different, and that's okay. So there's one thing to say, when I go to the next role, I'll do something different. The other thing, too, is to keep in mind that sometimes you want to talk to your management about leadership. Like, what does leadership mean for you? What does leadership mean to them? We often don't take enough time to talk to the people we work for about how we lead one another or how we're being led. And it will often open up a interesting conversation.
The next question. Sharon, you mentioned a book in the beginning of the presentation. Can you please re-mention the title of that book?
Sure. Her name is Amy Cuddy, C-U-D-D-Y, and the book is called Presence, and it's about how you can present yourself. She also has a very good TED Talk that to listen to, and the TED Talk is all about body language and presentation. So I highly recommend both of those.
Next. Every lab has their personal code of how people should be introduced depending on where they are in the academic hierarchy. What if that's not working for you? How do you make connections besides LinkedIn and at conferences?
Did you want to take that, Patrick, or you want me to take that?
Sure, I'll go ahead and answer that. I was looking at this question trying to figure out exactly how I'd want to answer that. But the idea is talk to anybody and everybody. And if they don't want to talk to you, then maybe they're not worth talking to. I do believe conferences are a great place to talk to people because most people want to talk there, and a lot of people are there to learn from others. So there are people always out there that you want to talk to. Talk to people in other areas of your institution. If you're in the laboratory, it's okay to talk to people who are in nursing or in respiratory therapy or even environmental services and nutritional services. It's amazing what you can learn from people that do things in different areas. I was in a project once where we looked at nutritional services and found out it's in many ways production oriented like lab is. So literally there's lots of people to talk to. If they don't want to talk to you, hey, move on because maybe they don't have anything to share. So that's my quick way of answering that one.
Great. The next question. How do you learn from people if they're not open to talking to you about what they do?
I think that's a limiting belief to start with. To have a more specific example would be helpful. As a coach, I would say remove that limiting belief first. And if one person doesn't talk to you, doesn't mean everybody feels the same way. So you keep trying. I think Patrick just said it in the last question as well. Find somebody else to speak to. Or if you're coming from a place of always asking versus giving, what might you be able to give back? If you do, for example, get to know a leader in your industry, how are you showing up? Can you share an article that you found that might be of interest to that person and use that as a segue? Particularly when you're reaching out on LinkedIn, I often suggest to people, having done the research, what gaps might you be able to fill or questions you can answer for somebody else? We go back to you do know, or you guys are researchers. Find answers to help other people as well.
The next question is for Patrick. Are you done?
Yep.
Okay, great. For Patrick, currently most job advertisements need senior to expert people. How did you get into the jobs where you're not an expert in it?
Well, first of all, don't assume you're not senior or you're not an expert in it. If you're at the level where you place job applications, you're always looking for somebody with experience and certain knowledge. But the people who apply may or may not have it. So don't sell yourself short. Always apply for something even if it's a stretch. It's good to learn about what that job is and about it. So if we go back to my story when I got the job in computers, I didn't know anything about it at all. And that's where you start to talk to people or you start to read books. You start to make yourself knowledgeable. You will often learn a lot when you don't get a job. I had an opportunity in my career to apply for a vice president job that I didn't get, but it gave me an hour with the CEO of the hospital that I never would have had if I hadn't have gone for that job, and it provided me with insight on what I would need and what skills I would need to move up the ladder for that. So my advice is go for it, and you never know what people are looking for. And I tell my students at the university, they're like, I don't have experience. I'm like, yes, you do. You've done this, you've had your internship, you've had your training. I said, you have more experience than you think you have. So don't sell yourself short. Go for it.
Great. So unfortunately, we don't have any more time for any more questions today. We would like to thank lab leaders for making today's webcast possible. A dedicated discussion guide will be available with on-demand access to this webcast on the webinars page of lableaders.com within the next week. You will receive an email from Labbers alerting you when this webcast will be available for replay. We invite you to forward that announcement to your colleagues who may have missed today's live event. You will also find news of the next installment of the Lab Leaders webinar series and have the ability to watch many more on demand. Ensure you're registered on lableaders.com for full access. Today's webcast will be available for on-demand viewing until December 2016. Thank you and goodbye.